The US president said that Iran should surrender. That means there's no more enrichment. It's the question of Iran to be surrendered. To mention the word Iran is too much for the mouth of the US president to even pronounce it, to say it. A great Iran and the word of surrender, they don't match. They don't match with each other. It's a joke. It's a ridiculous thing to say.
به ملت بزرگ ایران تبریک عرض بکنم.
I would like to congratulate the great nation of Iran. I want to congratulate them for a few reasons. First, I would like to congratulate them for victory over the fake regime of the Zionist regime. With all those claims that the Zionist regime were making, they almost were crushed under the blows of the Islamic government.
All right, group chat is back. Bringing back Holly Dagres. We were just talking about this. Where is he? Now we are seeing an image. We haven't verified the image. What are your instincts as you're watching it?
Well, he looks exhausted and very worn out, and I would assume rightfully so, given the events of the past 2 weeks, this war. And I think it's noteworthy that they're showing his face. I think they wanted to make a point that this man is alive, that the Supreme Leader is still around because of a lot of the conversations on the ground, like the questions about where is he? Is he still alive? So I think this was like a signaling that the Islamic Republic is still functioning for the time being.
Yeah, and Jasmine, I don't know to you, but the timing happens just when the Trump administration had planned to have their own kind of show and talk about this. Netanyahu in Israel is also dealing with a corruption trial that has resurfaced. Can you talk about the timing going into this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of what Iran is doing is also playing to their domestic audience. And so for the White House's perspective, they're constantly trying to figure out what is for the domestic audience in Iran and what is for them, what they should be responding to. And so I'm sure that you're going to hear the president respond to some of these claims potentially. Maybe we'll hear some at the 8 a.m. But they're constantly trying to sift through what they need to be consuming as they try to deal with this issue and what should be kind of left to the wayward for Iran and the Iranian people.
I think that this issue, when you're looking at this whole thing with Iran, it is just a fascinating time to see us all in America talking about this country again, talking about this region of the world again, and what we're trying to do with it as our country's trying to, our country's trying to engage with it. Today at 8 o'clock, I'm quite fascinated to see how the White House will try to finally put this to bed. They clearly really care a lot about this moment and about how these strikes have been covered. And I think that we're going to see today just what that spin's going to look like.
Jerusalem, last word to you.
I just think it's hard when no one in America wants to see this war. When after 9/11, there was a groundswell of frustration and anger genuinely from the democratic public that wanted to see action in the Middle East. That's not where we are right now. Most people don't want to see, let alone boots on the ground, they don't want to see much more action in the Middle East, another forever war.
And Iran's supreme leader lashing out at the U.S. in his first public comments since the ceasefire with Israel took effect. It comes as President Trump is still insisting that those nuclear sites in Iran were totally obliterated, his words, despite a preliminary assessment from the Pentagon's own intelligence arm that found those strikes set back Iran's program not by years, but by only a few months. CNN was the first to report that assessment. But new this morning, the head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog says the centrifuges at Iran's Fordo nuclear facility are, quote, no longer operational after the strikes. This is before and after an image of that site, which is dug into a mountain and goes deep underground. And the head of the CIA now saying there is credible evidence that the strikes, quote, severely damaged Iran's nuclear program. Also new this morning, those first comments in days from Iran's supreme leader. He claimed Iran, quote, crushed Israel and said the U.S. did not gain anything in this war. President Trump says U.S. and Iran will meet next week on a possible nuclear deal, but Iran has declined to confirm that meeting. We start with CNN's Elena Treen, who is at the White House, as she always is for us in the morning. We are learning a lot of different things. There's a lot of different words being used to describe exactly what happened, depending on who you talk to. What are we expecting to hear out of this news conference today?
Yeah, Sarah, I mean, look, we are 4 days out now from those U.S. strikes on these Iranian nuclear facilities, and it's clear that not only we are trying to learn more, but also we are getting increasingly more intelligence coming from this administration regarding the extent that those strikes did to damage those nuclear facilities. And essentially, the question of whether they were severely damaged, they were moderately damaged, or if they were totally obliterated, as the president has been saying repeatedly now. Now, you mentioned it, but I want to repeat it again. We have now heard from the CIA director, John Ratcliffe. His words were that the strikes had, quote, severely damaged Iran's nuclear program. Then we also heard from the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, who said that on the basis of satellite images, given the power of these bombs and technical characteristics of the centrifuges, that we do know now that they are no longer operational, referring to the centrifuges at Fordow. Now, of course, we are continuing to hear, Sarah, that much of these different intelligence reports are still preliminary. They're still trying to gather more evidence. And we are still waiting as well to see if and when people are actually going to be able to go to these sites physically on the ground and look at these different sites and really observe the damage face to face, as the president suggested yesterday when he was at the NATO summit that people were doing. Now, really, this entire subject, Sarah, dominated the NATO summit yesterday, and particularly that press conference we saw at the conclusion of the summit, where the president not only was answering questions about this, but also clearly wanted to focus on some of these intelligence analyses, and also really try to downplay that report from the Defense Intelligence Agency, one that, which I should say, for people who don't know, is the intelligence agency. It's an arm, the intelligence arm, really, of the Pentagon, and the director of it is actually the principal intelligence advisor to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Now, we did hear as well from the president, but also Hegseth say yesterday, reiterating over and over again this new intelligence analysis that they said had moderate to severe damage to these different nuclear sites, really trying to focus on the latter part of that severe damage. And then we heard, the president come out and continue to say, as well as Hegseth, that those sites were obliterated. All to say, Sarah, I think it's really important to note that, one, I don't think anyone is, trying to refute the courageous and valiant efforts of those soldiers and people in the military who flew those planes and carried out these strikes. The question is, how much damage was really done to those different sites, as the United States continues to assess really what the next steps are and how to move forward here.
All right, Elena Treen, thank you so much for your reporting there for us from the White House. CNN's Nick Robertson is live on the ground in Tel Aviv. Israel put out their own damage assessment of this. We've heard from, of course, President Trump. We are going to hear from Secretary of Defense Hegseth today. What is the reaction on the ground there, where you have been reporting as you go from site to site, where some of these missiles from Iran have struck buildings in Israel?
Look, the view from people here is that they're happy that this is over, that they think it was a success. They'll listen to the words of the supreme leader in Iran, and when he describes a crushing victory over Israel, they'll see just how hollow that is. That's not how it's perceived, and it's not how it is here. Interestingly, that's the same language that Prime Minister Netanyahu used 2 days ago to describe the victory over Iran, crushing. The key question here, for both the military and the intelligence agencies and for the Prime Minister, is how long, in terms of what the IAEA is describing, will those Iranian facilities remain out of operation? The Prime Minister here, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been very clear: if Iran does try to reconstitute its nuclear programs, then he said Israel will take the same actions as previously. So that is a very clear warning to the Iranian leadership that this may not be over, depending on their next move. Now, we know the Iranian parliament has voted, although this is not binding yet, not approved by the Guardian Council, voted not to interact and work with the International Atomic Energy Agency. And we know from the International Atomic Energy Agency, they still have inspectors in Iran who haven't been able to do their work over the past number of weeks, and they are ready to go back to these sites to make their assessments, and perhaps when and if they can, and I think it's a big if at the moment, that might get the best independent international eyes on the situation. We do know from both the Mossad chief here, the External Intelligence Service chief, and the head of the military, head of the IDF here, that Iran's program has been set back several years, and not just a sort of an isolated strike, but a systemic destruction of Iran's nuclear capabilities, according to the IDF chief. But it's not clear how close and how much visibility Israel has been able to have on the ground, if at all. The Mossad chief did congratulate his operatives and their work inside Iran in the recent months, even years, he said, and we do know that specialist elite forces from the Israeli military were on the ground part of the time during their strikes.